I didn't flinch when he said it. Not at first. Cody stood on the far end of the backyard, just beyond the raised bed I'd built with my own hands. He had a soccer ball tucked under one arm and a smirk on his face. His friends lingered behind him near the back porch. Lean boys with restless eyes watching, waiting for something entertaining. And Cody, my stepson, was always ready to perform. "You're temporary," he shouted, loud and clear. "You don't belong to this family." No stumble. No hesitation. He said it like a practiced line, a punchline he'd been holding in his mouth for months, maybe years. The words didn't sting right away. Not in that first breath. I was on my knees, replanting basil and rosemary. Dirt worked into the grooves of my knuckles. The sunlight filtered through the branches in slanted golden beams, and for a second I pretended I hadn't heard him. Pretended the world was still intact. But then his friends laughed. Quick, harsh, uncertain laughter, and something inside me shifted. I stared at him. He was 17, almost grown, taller than I'd remembered when I first stepped into this family 8 years ago. Back then he was all elbows and mistrust, sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, flipping through a comic book like I didn't exist. He'd never called me Dad. Not once. And I never asked him to. When I first moved in, it felt like possibility. That's what I told myself. Melissa, his mother, my wife, had divorced young, struggled for a while, worked nights at the hospital. She didn't have much. A creaky house with an uneven roofline, floors that groaned, a water heater on its last breath. But she had warmth, that rare, fragile thing that makes you believe you can fix something broken and be loved for trying. I was 38 then. I had no kids of my own. Just tools, patience, and a willingness to build something from scraps. I thought that made me a man worth having. I started small, fixed the leaky kitchen faucet, replaced the cracked bathroom tiles, spent weekends patching drywall, rewiring the flickering ceiling lights. Cody barely looked at me during those first few months, but he didn't complain. He'd eat the meals I cooked, ride in the truck I insured, use the internet I paid for. I told myself that was enough, that being useful was a kind of love. Melissa was grateful. In those early days, she touched my hand when she passed me coffee. She smiled when she saw me bent over a floorboard with a pry bar. She said things like, "I don't know what we'd do without you." And for a man like me, that sentence was gold. Purpose wrapped in praise. I took it and carried it every day like a badge. The years passed. I got used to the noise. Footsteps in the hall, music blaring from Cody's room, the slam of the fridge door. We had routines. Friday night takeout, Sunday morning pancakes. I paid for Cody's braces, his soccer cleats, his birthday parties. When he needed a laptop for school, I researched the best one and bought it without asking for reimbursement. When the car broke down, I was the one crawling under it at midnight in the driveway with a flashlight clenched in my teeth. And still, not once did he say thank you. Not once did he ask about my day. Melissa noticed, I think, but she didn't press. She'd say things like, "Teenagers are hard," or "He's just slow to warm up." I nodded and believed her. I let myself believe that patience could build a bridge, that I could earn my place if I just kept showing up. But every year the distance grew. There were small signs, dismissive tone, shrugged shoulders, a joke told to his friends that left me out. Once, I caught him scrolling through pictures of his biological dad on Instagram. A man who lived states away and paid child support late when he paid it all. Cody smiled more at that screen than he ever did at me. Still, I stayed. I stayed when Melissa's shifts got longer, when Cody's moods got sharper, when the silence at the dinner table stretched longer than the meals. I stayed through the eye rolls, the slammed doors, the endless cycle of giving and being forgotten. Then came that afternoon. Early October. Leaves everywhere. I'd been working in the yard all day, replacing the front steps that had finally rotted through. My back ached. My hands throbbed. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd notice. Maybe Cody would walk outside and say, "Looks good." Or Melissa would bring me water, a towel, a nod of acknowledgement. But instead, I got that moment. Him standing there like a prince in exile, flanked by his friends, full of contempt. You're temporary. You don't belong to this family. I heard the air leave my lungs. Not all at once. Just enough to feel the cold hit where the warmth used to live. And still, I didn't speak. What could I say? That I paid for his soccer camp last summer? That I canceled my fishing trip to drive him 3 hours to a science competition? That I spent nights on the porch with a calculator figuring out how to afford his college visits? None of that mattered now. Not to him. Not to Melissa, who was inside at that moment, probably scrolling through her phone, unaware or unwilling to step out and stop it. I looked down at the basil still in its tray, half the roots exposed, fragile. Then I stood, walked to the garage, wiped my hands, packed my tools, each one into its proper place. Power drill, socket set, voltage tester. They all slid into the crate with the weight of something final. I didn't rush. I wasn't angry, just methodical the way I've always been. I locked the back of the truck, went inside, packed one bag, just clothes, left the rest, the things I bought, the things I fixed, the things I thought made me belong. By sunset, I was gone. No fight, no note. Melissa texted that night. "Where are you?" I didn't answer, because I knew if she had wanted me to stay, she would have stepped outside when he said it. She would have said, "Don't talk to him like that." She would have said, "He belongs here." But she didn't, and that silence was louder than anything Cody had screamed. Everything shifted the year Cody started talking to his father again. Tom. Even the name tasted like rust. He hadn't been around in years, not really. A few calls on birthdays, a pair of cheap earbuds for Christmas, a gas station gift card mailed 6 months late. That was the extent of his parenting. But when Cody turned 15, something changed. I came home from work one night, and there was his voice, Tom's voice, echoing from the living room speaker. "Hey, buddy, been thinking about you. You still playing midfield?" Melissa didn't mention it to me. Neither did Cody. I found out by accident, the way you find out someone's been digging a tunnel under your feet. After that call, things grew colder. It was subtle at first. Cody stopped asking me for rides. If I offered to help with homework, he said, "I'm good." He started quoting Tom in arguments, little things. "Tom says I should get more freedom." Or, "Tom thinks I'm old enough to decide." Always Tom. Never Dad. He didn't even call me Alex anymore. Just a grunt or a yeah from across the room. The worst part? Melissa said nothing. I told her once after dinner. "It's like he's replacing me." She didn't even look up from her wine. Just said, "He's allowed to have a relationship with his father." I remember the way her lips wrapped around the word father. Like it had weight. Like it had earned something I never could. I worked more after that. Took every shift. Every side job. My hands were never clean. My back never stopped hurting. But I told myself I was doing it for the family. That it was worth it. I paid for Cody's driving school. I covered the Jeep he insisted on, old but functional, and put the insurance under my name. When he wrecked it 3 months later, I didn't yell. I just paid the deductible and got it fixed. I signed off on the laptop he wanted, high-end, top specs, the kind his friends bragged about. When Melissa hesitated, I stepped in. Said, "Let him have something nice. It'll help with school." She nodded, kissed my cheek. "You're good to him," she said. But Cody never said thank you. Never. And still I stayed. I stayed because I believed that time meant something. That years of quiet labor and steady presence could earn you a place at the table. That was the lie I lived in. Until that night. We were eating dinner, rotisserie chicken, boxed potatoes, something green no one touched. Cody had his phone on the table. Melissa said nothing. I asked him to put it away. He rolled his eyes. "I'm waiting for a call." "From who?" "Tom." The word hit like a slap. Melissa didn't flinch, just sipped her wine. I put my fork down. "We're eating as a family." Cody scoffed. "Family?" Then he laughed, short, bitter, teenage venom. "You're not part of this family." The silence that followed was immediate. Thick, pressed against the walls. I looked at Melissa. I waited. I waited for her to say something. To scold him. To defend me. to correct the child we'd both raised. But she didn't even look up from her plate. She just sighed. That long, exhausted sigh women give when they're tired of pretending to care. And that was it. That was the moment something broke in me. Not snapped. Not shattered. Just let go. I cleared my plate, washed it, dried it, set it on the rack. Then I went into the office and opened my desk drawer. Inside was a folder. I hadn't touched it in years. It held receipts, bank statements, account passwords. Everything I'd built for Cody quietly without applause. A dorm fund. $17,400 saved across 4 years. His mother knew about it. Cody didn't. I was going to surprise him after he got accepted. I pictured the look on his face. Shock. Maybe gratitude. Maybe something warmer. Now I saw the truth. He wouldn't have said thank you. He would have said, Tom would have done more. So I made a decision. No yelling. No confrontation. Just action. I logged into the bank. Transferred the dorm fund to a new account under my godson's name, Jonah. A good kid. Sent me birthday cards every year. Called me Uncle Alex even when he was small. He wants to be an engineer. Now he'll get the chance. I canceled Cody's insurance. Effective immediately. I deleted the school payment reminders from my calendar. I pulled the plug, silently, carefully, on every pipeline that connected my labor to that boy's future. That night, I packed a single suitcase. Melissa was asleep on the couch. Cody was upstairs, laughing into his phone. I left the keys on the counter, took my tools, drove off into the dark. No goodbyes, no anger, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the strange, heavy lightness of being free. It didn't take long for the silence to be broken. 3 days. That's all it took before Melissa started texting. At first, it was subtle. Hey, just wondering if you're okay. Then, did something happen? Cody's confused. Then the real question, did you cancel the dorm fund? I didn't respond. Not right away. I was sitting in the garage apartment I'd rented on the edge of town. 2 rooms. Small stove. Shower with a curtain that didn't reach the floor. Smelled like old paint and dust. But it was mine. No pictures on the walls. No footsteps above me. Just the low hum of a box fan and the whir of my thoughts finally slowing down. When I got tired of hearing the phone buzz, I turned it off. They say the absence of sound is peaceful. That's not always true. Sometimes silence rings louder than screams. The fallout came a week later. Melissa called not to ask, not to beg, but to accuse. You actually did it, she said, her voice sharp. You canceled everything. There was no shock in her tone, just disbelief. Like I had broken an unspoken contract she never signed but always expected me to honor. You cut off his tuition, his insurance, his allowance. I said nothing. She kept going. The financial aid office called. They said the payment bounced. Cody's freaking out. He missed a deadline. Again, I said nothing. You can't just. I did. I interrupted. Silence on her end. Heavy. Controlled. Then she said it, not with anger, but with something far worse, wounded pride. He didn't mean it. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Not loud. Just a breath, bitter and hollow. He didn't mean it, I repeated. But you didn't stop him. Not then. Not ever. You were part of this family, she said, and it was almost convincing, like a lie spoken often enough to pass for memory. No, I said. I was an extra. Don't do this, she whispered. I hung up. The next day, Cody found me. I don't know how, maybe Melissa gave him the address. Maybe he remembered the garage I used to work from when I first started freelancing. Maybe he just followed the trail of things I'd paid for and watched them end. He didn't knock. Just stood at the edge of the driveway holding a stack of papers, financial forms probably. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. He'd filled out in the shoulders, grown a beard, wore clothes that tried too hard to look effortless. But his eyes were that of a boy who just realized the bridge he burned was the only one across. You really canceled everything? He asked. I nodded. I missed my housing deadline, he said. They gave my spot to someone else. And the payment, They said if it's not resolved by next week, I'm out. Like expelled. I waited. He didn't apologize. Didn't even look sorry. Just stared at me like I was the villain in a movie he didn't understand. I spoke slowly. You said I wasn't part of your family. I was angry, he said. No, I corrected. You were honest. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The wind blew a piece of paper from his hand. He didn't chase it. I turned and walked back inside. He didn't follow. Cody didn't go to college that fall. Tom couldn't cover the bill. The school offered a deferral, but Cody didn't take it. Melissa tried to apply for a loan. Her credit wasn't good enough. I know because she texted me from a new number, hoping I wouldn't recognize it. Can you co-sign? I didn't reply. I deleted the thread. A month later, I heard from a friend that Cody had taken a job at a tire shop. Part-time. Minimum wage. Melissa moved in with her sister. The house, the one I'd wired, repainted, re-roofed, went up for sale. I drove past it once. The porch sagged. The gutters overflowed. A for sale by owner sign leaned sideways in the front yard. Letters faded by sun. Nobody waved. They held his graduation party at a rented pizza joint. Photos made their way to my inbox from mutual friends. Cody in a collared shirt, flanked by classmates. Melissa smiling in that stiff, performative way people do when they've been caught in the consequences of their own silence. Tom was there too, wearing sunglasses indoors, holding a beer, standing just close enough to look involved, just far enough to slip away. They served sheet cake and warm soda. No college banners. No acceptance posters. Just balloons and pizza and the absence of a future. I started sleeping again. Not well, but deeply. The kind of sleep you get when no one's depending on you to patch their life together. I kept working just enough. Fixed a few outlets, rewired a porch, installed lighting in a dentist's office. Simple jobs. No drama. I brought my own tools. Ate lunch alone. Cashed checks with no strings attached. Sometimes I thought about Cody. Not in anger. Not even in sadness. Just as a name that used to mean something. Like a password to a door that no longer opened. 2 months passed before I heard the knock. It wasn't frantic. Not angry. Just 3 measured taps like someone testing the weight of the door. I opened it to find Cody standing on the stoop. He looked tired. Not in the dramatic way teenagers wear exhaustion like fashion, but truly worn. Hair unkempt, shirt wrinkled, shoes that didn't quite fit. He held a manila envelope, swollen with paper. I could see the edges of college forms, tuition appeals, aid requests, copies of unpaid invoices. Can we talk? He asked. I said nothing, just held the door open. He stepped inside like someone walking into a church they hadn't visited since childhood. Head low, shoulders tense. He took a seat at the small kitchen table. I stayed standing. He laid the envelope on the surface. I'm trying to fix it, he said. I know I messed up. I know what I said was wrong. I waited. Let the silence stretch. He shifted in his seat. I wasn't thinking. I was pissed. I was trying to impress my friends. I stayed quiet. His voice cracked. I didn't mean it. I finally spoke. Yes, you did. He looked up, eyes wide. You meant it, I said again. And worse, you believed it. Maybe you still do. He looked away. The truth, Cody, is that you only came here because things fell apart. You didn't come because you regret what you said. You came because you finally felt the weight of what I carried. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I walked to the sink, poured myself a glass of water, sipped it slowly. You came to collect what you thought was still owed to you, I said. But you forget. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore. He blinked fast, swallowed. But you, he started. I was there. I cut in. For 8 years. I paid. I built. I sacrificed. I showed up. And you used every ounce of that without once recognizing it. He opened the envelope, pulled out a letter. It's from the school. If I can get the payment in by Friday, they'll let me re-enroll for spring. Otherwise, I lose the spot permanently. I didn't reach for it. He pushed it across the table. I'm asking for help. Please. I looked at him, really looked. Not as the boy I once tried to raise. Not as Melissa's son. Just a young man who had grown accustomed to taking, now facing the void where generosity used to live. You didn't lose me the day I left, I said. You lost me when you stood in the backyard, surrounded by your friends, and tried to humiliate me. And you lost me again when your mother said nothing. He flinched. Respect, I said, isn't earned by blood. It's earned by recognition, by decency, by showing up for someone the way they show up for you. I turned the envelope back toward him. You didn't come here to rebuild anything. You came because your backup plan ran dry. That's not true, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I set my glass down. If you want to rebuild something, you start with accountability. Not requests, not guilt, not appeals. Words. He stared at the table. I nodded at the door. You can go now. He stood, slower this time, didn't grab the envelope, just looked at me one last time. Am I ever going to be able to fix this? I looked him in the eyes. Only if you stop treating people like they're replaceable, like they're furniture you can ignore until the rent is due. He didn't speak again. He left without slamming the door. Melissa never showed. Not after the phone calls. Not after the texts. Not after the third-hand messages from friends asking, "Can't you just forgive him?" She stayed silent. The same silence she wore like armor in that dining room. In the car rides. In the weekends I paid for and the birthdays I planned. That's how I knew she wasn't sorry. Not really. Sometimes, I wonder what kind of man I became in that house. Was I too quiet? Too patient? Did I let too much slide? Did I mistake endurance for virtue? There's no easy answer. What I know is this: I built a life for people who saw me as a shadow, a bank account, a ghost with a hammer. And when the illusion broke, they didn't try to rebuild it. They tried to tape it together with apologies that came too late. I gave the dorm fund to Jonah, my godson. He cried when I told him, not because of the money, but because someone believed in him. He wrote me a letter, actual paper, and said, "You're the only one who ever showed up." It sits in my toolbox now, right under the tape measure. Cody didn't re-enroll. Tom didn't come through. The school closed the account. He got a job at a warehouse 2 towns over. Graveyard shifts. Hauling pallets. I heard he got a girl pregnant. That Melissa moved in to help. That they're scraping by. I don't take pleasure in it. But I don't feel guilty either. Because this is what happens when you teach a boy that effort is optional and sacrifice is expected. When you let him believe that someone will always catch him, no matter how many times he spits in their face. There's a question I keep coming back to. It echoes through every job I take, every quiet evening I spend alone. Was I wrong? Was I wrong to walk away? Was I wrong to stop paying for a future that never had space for me in it? Was I cruel? Was I heartless? Or was I finally honest? You tell me, would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying the bill for a seat you weren't allowed to sit in?